Constituents tell me how high costs are affecting them and their families, and Democrats are listening. That's why we passed the American Rescue Plan, which allowed Medicaid to limit drug prices starting this year. We also passed another law, the Inflation Reduction Act, that capped insulin costs $35 a month. And as a result of these laws, the three largest manufacturers of insulin have announced that they would slash the cost of insulin by 75%. These are real cost savings for the 62,000 constituents in my district who are living with diabetes. What are Republicans focused on? Well, the Republican Study Committee just released a budget. About 70-some% of the members are part of that committee that wants to raise the retirement age for Social Security, end Medicare as we know it, ban IVF, and roll back the Affordable Care Act. The two parties are not the same.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Hampshire seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the reckless budget proposal released this week by a group of House Republicans. This budget will cut Medicare, make health care more expensive, and undo the real progress that we've been making to lower prescription drug prices. It would also cut Social Security benefits and raise the retirement age, forcing hardworking Americans to work even longer. The only winners in this budget plan are the ultra-wealthy and the biggest corporations who get rewarded with huge tax cuts. This is backward, it's wrong, and it's something I'll fight every step of the way. New Hampshire seniors who have paid into Social Security and Medicare need to know that their earned benefits will be there for them when they retire. And I remain committed to fighting to strengthen Social Security and Medicare, to lowering the cost of health care and prescription drugs for all Americans, and Congress must make this a top priority. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the trailblazing women throughout history who have fought for justices and equal rights. And I'm proud that many of these women were and are Oregonians. There's Abigail Scott Dunaway from Yamhill County, who became a vocal advocate for women's suffrage and was the first woman to register to vote in Oregon. Or former Governor Barbara Roberts, who grew up in Sheridan and became the first woman elected to serve as governor of Oregon. Or Katherine Harrison, who helped gain federal recognition for the Grand Ronde tribe in my district. These are just a few examples, but there are many more women leaders who are largely left out of history books. Recognizing their legacy is one important step. But we must continue building on the progress they've already made. That's why I will keep working to expand access to paid leave and affordable childcare, protect reproductive freedoms across the nation, and put an end to violence against women and girls. During Women's History Month and every day of the year, in honor of those who came before us, I will keep up the fight. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today to be able to reaffirm to the American people that I did and my colleagues did our job today as I stand in support of the resolution and the appropriations that kept the government open. I told my constituents I could not be at the various events of today, Friday, March 22nd, because I had to be here to ensure that our students had Pell Grants, to make sure that small businesses have been supported, to ensure that Medicaid and Medicare were strongly enforced and public health is still in place. I wanted to make sure that we had the biomedical research that helped so many lives be restored. And of course, I am a champion and an advocate for mental health care. It is not enough for the families who suffer and try to help their loved ones. I want to make sure that we get rid of tax cheats and, of course, the drug of choice that kills Americans, fentanyl. I want to be part of the fight as a senior member of the Judiciary Committee and to be sure that Ukraine and Gaza gets the appropriations and the dollars that they need. We stood to keep the government open today, and I am excited about the fact that that vote went through with my help and the help of my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, this is important enough to let the American people know the government is open now.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., March 22, 2024. I hereby designate the period from February, March 22, 2024 through Monday, April 8, 2024 as a district work period under Section 3Z of House Resolution 5. Signed sincerely, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Salazar, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing me. And President Ronald Reagan warned in 1985 that America has an unrelenting obligation to halt communist penetration in our hemisphere. If we fail to meet this obligation, we will send the unmistakable signal that the greatest power in the world is unwilling and incapable of stopping communist aggression in our own backyard. Right now, we're facing that scenario in the island of Cuba and Haiti. History teaches us that the current threats in our hemisphere must be addressed with the utmost seriousness, for these issues go to the heart of American security and American history. I stand here today to ensure that once again we learn from history and understand that the turmoil in our hemisphere, in America's own backyard, can and must be stopped, or the price we pay will be dear. Let's focus on Cuba and Haiti. The stakes are incredibly high. The Cuban people live in a perpetual cycle of misery and despair at the hands of their communist oppressors. They are deprived of basic necessities like food and electricity, living in literal darkness for hours a day, a product of the communist regime's intentional rolling blackouts. The regime has adopted the slogan Patria o Muerte, or patriotism or death, while subjecting the Cuban people for the last 60 years to conditions that will surely lead them to the latter, death from deprivation. A few days ago, Cuban protesters bravely took to the streets of Santiago and other cities on the island after once again being subjected to massive food shortages and blackouts for up to 18 hours a day. Now the protesters are crying out Patria y Vida, or patriotism and life. In response, the Cuban regime, did what they always do, blame us, the United States, for our embargo. But we fully understand the operations manual for the communist Cuban regime's propaganda machine. They have been exploiting, starving, imprisoning, and beating their own people for decades. But we know the truth. We, as a Congress, as an American people, can take several steps to ensure the protesters' voices are not shouting in vain. First, I am calling on President Biden and the administration to take a stronger stance against the Cuban regime and stand in solidarity with the brave freedom fighters pouring onto the streets all over Cuba. United States support for the Cuban freedom fighters is not a partisan issue. It is a morally right and intimately linked to our own security and our own history, freedom, and democracy. We know that information is power. So let's provide internet access to the Cubans now so they can have a window to the free world. Now, I am talking to the Cuban military commanders. I have a crucial message for you. History has its eyes on you. It is inevitable that peaceful protesters will continue to take to the streets in Cuba in the hopes of finding freedom. And there will come a time when your moral integrity will face the ultimate test, whether or not to raise your weapons against your own neighbors and your own friends. My message from this floor is very clear to the Cuban military commanders. Make the right choice. Do not shoot at your own fellow citizens. Do not shoot at the Cuban people. Myself, as a member of this Congress, the United States of America, and history itself will recount these days, and your own legacies will be a result of you holding your fire. Now, this is not just Cuba that needs our attention. Another monster is looming large in our backyard, threatening America's security: Haiti. Haiti is crumbling, a completely failed state in anarchy, overrun by gangs, violence, and chaos. Haiti's humanitarian, political, and security crisis grows worse by the second, while most people are on the brink of starvation. There is currently a Haitian refugee crisis unfolding. Haitian refugees will pour into our own country by the thousands. But for the last 2 years, the Biden administration swept the problems brewing in Haiti under the rug, and now their worst nightmare has appeared. We must call for a coalition of our allies in Latin America to help restore order in Haiti and halt the threat before it impacts additional countries like the Dominican Republic. America's enemies, hostile countries like China, Iran, and Russia, would love nothing more than to force communism onto our small neighbors like Haiti, just like they did in Cuba 60 years ago. We cannot sit idly by nor afford to ignore the flames growing. We must take action now. I urge the Biden administration to place close attention to my warnings. We need a clean strategy on the situation in Haiti, and we need to look to Congress to lead the way, this Congress. We must extinguish the flames of instability and communism burning in our backyard. If we don't, they will surely continue all the way through our own American kitchen. We cannot ignore Haiti or Cuba. I thank you, and I yield the balance of my time.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. And still I rise. A proud, liberated Democrat, unbought, unbossed, and unafraid. In the spirit of Shirley Chisholm, I rise, a great and noble American. Mr. Speaker, I rise today on another mission of mercy. I rise today because this morning at approximately 4:30 a.m., I was reviewing a news story. And in this news story, there was an indication that there was death in Haiti. I had an opportunity to see on the screen of my television the horrors that were emanating from the story. Mr. Speaker, I saw a person lying in the street, a person lying in the street who was apparently without life. It is not a pleasant thing to see someone without life, but to see a person lying in the street without life, with only a portion of the body discernible, was quite an experience. But as I saw this person lying in the street, Mr. Speaker, I also saw persons passing by. Most of them were on vehicles of the two-wheel variety. And as they passed by, some of them looked, but others barely glanced. And among those passing by were young, old, but also there was a person who was with law enforcement who passed by. A body lying in the street. Someone was interviewed, and it was explained by the person interviewed that this person had been attacked by people who were of the opinion that they were defending themselves. And they attacked this person with machetes, severed limbs from the body. At least that is the way it appeared to me as I viewed this on my screen, my TV screen. It was quite shocking and appalling to see this body lying in the street. People just simply passing by. Haiti is a country in turmoil. And if you believe that injustice anywhere, as Dr. King put it, is a threat to justice everywhere, you have to be concerned about what's happening in Haiti. You have to be concerned. The statistical information related to the atrocities that are occurring can stir the soul, can literally cause persons to come to tears if you truly care about people. I'd like to share some of the information, and hopefully those who believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere will have some concern about the injustice that's taking place in Haiti. According to the UN Special Representative for Haiti, more than 8,400 people were victims of gang violence in Haiti in the last year. The last year alone, more than 8,400 people victims of gang violence. Now, Haiti is a country with a population of a little more than 11 million, perhaps about 11,500,000. Haiti is a country that is closer to the United States than Houston, Texas is to El Paso, Texas. Haiti is just off of our shores. We ought to be concerned. Haiti last year, including killings, injuries, and kidnappings, had about a 122% increase over 2022. The UN Commission for Human Rights, Volker Turk, warned that across Haiti last year, at least 3,600 people had been killed, 1,432 injured, 2,951 kidnapped in gang-related violence, and this was as of November. The number of injuries in Haiti. According to the United Nations Quarterly Report on Human Rights situated in Haiti, lynchings, something that causes me a good deal of concern with my history. My history is one that has suffered great lynchings. Lynchings have left at least 76 people dead across the country. At least 1,634 people were killed or injured as a result of violence by criminal groups. Gangs of people killing 1,634 people. At least 693 people were kidnapped in the last quarter of 2023, an increase of 18% over the previous quarter. At least 53 children, some as young as 6 months old, were kidnapped, killed, or injured during the last quarter of 2023. This ought to cause people who believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere to have some concern. Almost 500 children had no time to escape from a school that they were trapped in and had to remain in that school for some 2 days. The healthcare situation in Haiti has greatly deteriorated. According to The Guardian, Haiti's healthcare system has all but collapsed amid the ferocious gang insurrection that's taking place. Hospitals have been set ablaze. Doctors have been murdered. And even basic medical supplies have dried up. Currently, only one public hospital in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, remains operational, but is expected to shut its doors. Mr. Speaker, a summary of the food situation can bring one to ask, how could we allow such circumstances to exist? According to NPR, since the COVID virus took its toll, at least 4 million people in Haiti have been acutely food insecure. And now, out of those 4 million, 1 million are one step away from famine. According to the Washington Post, there were disturbances in January and food prices jumped 25%. In the South, where roadblocks came up and trucks weren't able to get to Port-au-Prince with basic necessities. Mr. Speaker, the World Food Program survey found that as prices go up, household incomes are going down because people can't go to work and are sheltering in place and aren't going to earn money. If we truly believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, we have to be concerned about the persons in Haiti because many of them will want to leave and seek safety elsewhere. Some of them will make an attempt to come to this country. Unfortunately, our country has a history of turning Haitians away. It wasn't that long ago that as the persons from Cuba were escaping Cuba and coming to this country, we had a policy that was called, if you will, wet foot, dry foot. This policy of wet foot, dry foot would allow a Cuban to get 1 foot on dry land in the United States of America and then move forward into the country, move forward on a pathway that would lead to jobs, that would lead to a better life, and possibly lead to citizenship in the country. Wet foot, dry foot was the name of the policy. It applied to Cubans. At the same time, Cubans were arriving in this country from Castro's Cuba, as we have called it. But as Cubans were arriving in this country, Haitians were arriving. Haitians were fleeing poverty and despair, hunger, death. At the same time they were arriving, the Haitians could get both feet on dry land, could acquire a job, but if they were discovered, they were sent back to Haiti. One policy for persons coming from Cuba, known as wet foot, dry foot, that is the way the policy was styled. And another policy for persons coming from Haiti that would cause them to be returned to Haiti, back to despair, back to poverty, and some of them back to lives that are unthinkable as we envision life for human beings. We have not treated Haiti fairly when compared to how we treated others within this hemisphere. A country that, again, is closer to the United States than Houston, Texas is to El Paso, Texas. Mr. Speaker, if we truly believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, we ought to release the some $40 million that are available to help Haiti. $40 million available that we could release if we would but only agree to let the money that has already been appropriated go to Haiti. $40 million available. Not enough, but more than they would have and would be of help to some. $40 million. 2 people out of 435 plus 100 in the Senate are holding up this money that could go to Haiti and help the Haitian people. If you truly believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, release the $40 million. Release the money to Haiti. There can be any number of reasons why you would hold the money, but in my opinion, what's happening in Haiti, as I have explained it, would justify releasing the money. Release the money so that Haiti can get some of the help that it needs. Voltaire reminded us that those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. It is an absurdity to believe that holding on to this $40 million is somehow going to benefit us and the people in Haiti. $40 million ought to be released. It is an absurdity to think that holding on to this $40 million is somehow going to improve conditions in Haiti. I don't believe anyone believes that. But I also would hope that no one believes that holding on to the $40 million is more important than helping those persons who are suffering in Haiti. We ought to release this $40 million. It is an absurdity to hold on to this money. And those who can cause you to believe absurdities can cause you to commit atrocities. So in truth, our fingerprints are on some of what is happening in Haiti because we could prevent some of what is happening in Haiti with the funds that have already been allocated, but because we refuse to send the $40 million, people are going to suffer. Not enough money is the $40 million, but it's more than they have, and it can alleviate some of the suffering that's taking place. So I rise on this mission of mercy with an appeal to the two people who, but with their signatures, could release $40 million to suffering people. Use that pen to make a difference. Take your hand, grab that pen, and release that $40 million to the Haitians who can benefit from it. I thank you for the time, Mr. Speaker, and I believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and we have a threat that is imminent and can, unfortunately, take its place across the Gulf and find its home here in this country. Injustice does not stay within the confines of any one border if it persists long enough. It's time for us to help the people in Haiti and release the $40 million. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, for 30 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, COVID-era school shutdowns were the most consequential political failure of at least the 21st century. And we are finally starting to see some recognition of that. Yet, we still have not fully reckoned with the sheer breadth and scale of the harm that was done to so many people and to our entire country. We haven't had nearly the level of accountability for those who were responsible for these decisions. And we certainly haven't seen the fundamental change to public education in this country that what happened ought to have catalyzed. But at least we are starting to see some recognition of the harm that was done and the mistakes that were made. Here's an article from the New York Times. What the data says about pandemic school closures 4 years later. The more time students spent in remote instruction, the further they fell behind. And experts say extended closures did little to stop the spread of COVID. I'd like to read a few excerpts from this article. Some schools, it says, often in Republican-led states, reopened by fall 2020. Others, typically in large cities and states led by Democrats, for another year. In the time since. Today, there is broad acknowledgement among many public health and education experts that extended school closures did not significantly stop the spread of COVID, while the academic harms for children have been large and long-lasting. Dr. Sean O'Leary, a pediatric infectious disease specialist who worked with the American Academy of Pediatrics, says there's fairly good consensus that in general, as a society, we probably kept kids out of school longer than we should have. The article continues, a growing body of research shows that pandemic school closures came at a steep cost to children. At the state level, more time spent in remote or hybrid instruction in the 2021 school year was associated with larger drops in test scores, according to a New York Times analysis of school closure data and results from the National Assessment of Educational Progress. At the school district level, that finding also holds, according to analysis of test scores from 3rd through 8th grade in thousands of U.S. districts, led by researchers at Stanford and Harvard. At districts where students spent most of the 2021 school year learning remotely, they fell more than half a grade behind in math on average, while in districts that spent most of the year in person, they lost just over a third of a grade. The article continues, that the larger gaps that remain are among students that lost the most ground to begin with. Students in districts that were remote or hybrid the longest, at least 90% of the 2021 school year, still had almost double the ground to make up compared with students in districts that allowed students back for most of the year. As districts shifted towards in-person learning as the year went on, Students that were offered a hybrid schedule did better on average than those in places where school was fully remote, but worse than those in places that had school fully in person. In particular, young people in low-income communities suffered the most. The Times notes that the combination, poverty and remote learning, was particularly harmful. For each week spent remote, students in poor districts experienced steeper losses in math than peers in richer districts. The article continues, other things were also associated with worse student outcomes, including increased anxiety and depression among adults in children's lives and the overall restriction of social activity in a community, according to the Stanford and Harvard research. Finally, the article notes that closing schools did not appear to significantly slow COVID's spread. By the fall of 2020, when there were initial signs that children were less likely to become seriously ill and growing evidence from Europe and parts of the United States that opening schools with safety measures did not lead to significantly more transmission. That was clear in the fall of 2020, at the time that so many schools remained closed. Dr. Gene Noble, who directed the COVID response at the UCSF Emergency Department, University of San Francisco, said that infectious disease leaders have generally agreed that school closures were not an important strategy in stemming the spread of COVID. In addition to the Times acknowledgement here, you also have a new study out of Stanford's Hoover Institute that shows that because of the reduction in lifetime earning potential for students because of the learning loss they experienced, it is going to have a truly staggering economic impact on our country. The study finds that our nation will lose some $31 trillion, trillion with a T, 31 trillion during the 21st century because of this catastrophic policy. Now, while this Times article is collecting data 4 years later, this was all very clear at the time, from nearly the beginning of the pandemic. I said so myself when our governor, Gavin Newsom, in early July of 2020, ordered California schools to be closed for the coming school year. I released a statement saying today's decision elevates the appearance of safety over actual student safety. A growing body of evidence suggests school closures do little to flatten the epidemic curve while they are a calamity for kids. And I certainly was not alone in saying so. On June 29th of 2020, the American Academy of Pediatrics, quote, said that strongly all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with a goal of having students physically present in school. I did a survey of my district at the time. This is June, July of 2020, heading into the 2021 school year. 6,028 people responded, and over 80% said they wanted an in-person learning option to start the school year. And yet our governor, like many others, did not abide by their wishes. He shut down schools across the state. But tellingly, he sent his own children to in-person private school at the exact same time that he was expelling millions of less fortunate kids from California public schools. That tells you everything you need to know about the fact that he knew that his policy was the wrong thing to do. And while California was the very worst state in the country, dead last out of all 50 states in getting kids back to school, many states in this country reopened their schools far too slowly. Although many did, in fact, open for the fall of 2020, and their children experienced very little learning loss. And that is further evidence of what the data made very clear at that time. Now, the Biden administration, for its part, was complicit in all of this. The administration, for example, had all of the wrong priorities, going after the governors who refused to do child mask mandates rather than criticizing the governors who refused to open schools. The Education Department even sued, the Biden administration even sued states that opted not to do child mask mandates. Mandates, by the way, that flew in the face of all available evidence and ran directly against what the WHO recommended in some cases and our counterparts in Europe. The administration sued governors for refusing to enforce child mask mandates, and yet would not criticize governors who refused to open schools. I asked the Secretary of Education about this myself at a hearing last year. I said, did you ever criticize Gavin Newsom or governors like him for refusing to open schools? Did you ever encourage them to open schools? And he could not give me a single example of when he did so. So the blame for this disastrous set of policy decisions lies first and foremost with the state leaders who made them. But the Biden administration was very much complicit in something that is going to be with our country, the harms of which are going to be with our country for a very long time. And so why is it important to still focus on this, now that we're through the pandemic and kids are back in school? In one infamous article in The Atlantic, the writer proposed that we have a pandemic amnesty, and we just forget everything that happened, and we avoid revisiting the mistakes that were made. But I think that is exactly the wrong thing to do, for a few reasons. The first is that it's an insult to the millions and millions of kids across this country who have suffered so much, who suffered dramatic learning loss, whose learning and lives and careers are now going to be held back, who suffered from a mental health perspective, from a social development perspective, who weren't able to play youth sports, who suffered so many other things because of what political leaders, people in power, knew to be the wrong decision. What's more is this harm is still ongoing. The harm that kids suffered, the learning loss that they suffered, they have not regained the ground that was lost. And frankly, we have not done nearly enough to try to provide the support that is needed to help students regain those losses more quickly. But finally, what happened during the COVID era provided a window into the broader failures in public education in many parts of this country. California, for example, even before COVID, ranked last out of the 48 states, second in the continental U.S., second to last out of all 50 states when it came to education outcomes in low-income communities. And then, lo and behold, California also had the worst COVID policies with the longest school shutdown. And so these both facts derive from the same underlying cause, which is that our public education system simply is not about the kids. We see that right now in the ongoing attacks on charter schools, where this administration has tried to cut grants for charter schools, where California has made it much more difficult to open and to replicate high-performing charter schools, and where just last week, the second largest school district in the country, the Los Angeles Unified School District, voted to restrict the operation of charter schools in what is largely a failing district. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we have a long way to go to fully come to terms with what happened in education during the COVID era in this country, and certainly a long way to go to make the necessary reforms to assure that every child in this country gets the education they deserve. But at least the acknowledgement we see here is a start. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take a moment to recognize a truly remarkable veteran and community member in my district, Mr. Shigeru Oshii, for his 100-year milestone birthday. On February 26th, in Folsom, California, Mr. Oshii celebrated a century's worth of life experiences and history, which included many notable events and personal accomplishments, as well as much adversity and hardship. Mr. Oshii was born in 1924 and was raised in East Los Angeles, where he experienced the economic downturn of the Great Depression. Less than 2 months before he was to graduate high school, World War II commenced and was underway. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, Mr. Oshii and his family were ordered to an internment camp in Inyo County due to their Japanese ancestry. After being released from the internment camp 1 month after his 19th birthday, this was in 1943, he went on to pursue higher education at Macalester College in Minnesota. He was able to complete 1 year at the college before being drafted by the U.S. Army. Now, despite the challenge of living through incarceration in an internment camp, Mr. Oshie recalls being eager to show his loyalty to the United States by serving in our military. As part of his service, he graduated from the Military Intelligence Service Language School and was deployed to Hiroshima, where his family originated, to support his fellow soldiers and assist in post-war efforts. Following his service in World War II, he completed his degree, and then in the spring, the graduate record exam was administered nationally for the first time, and he received a perfect score in math. This score, in addition to his excellent academic record, earned him a full scholarship to MIT for graduate school, where he graduated at the top of his class in 1951. Throughout his life, Mr. Oshie has continually exhibited the qualities of determination, resilience, and perseverance. And he's known by all who know him for his devotion to his family, community, and country. I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Oshie at his 100-year birthday celebration. It was truly a wonderful experience. He is such an inspiration, and I am honored to represent exemplary individuals like him in the U.S. House. He embodies the American spirit of patriotism and is an inspiration to our entire community. Therefore, on behalf of California's 3rd Congressional District and the United States House of Representatives, I'm honored to recognize Mr. Shigeru Oshie for his centennial birthday and wish to express our nation's gratitude for his heroic and invaluable service. Mr. Speaker, I wish to recognize the retiring town manager for the town of Mammoth Lakes, Daniel C. Haller, for his years of service to the Mammoth Lakes community. Mr. Haller has served the people of Mammoth Lakes for more than a decade with an overall career in public service of over 36 years. Mr. Haller began his government career in 1987. Throughout his career, he worked for many different municipalities, including the city of Glendora, the city of West Covina, Douglas County in Nevada, and lastly, the town of Mammoth Lakes. During Mr. Haller's tenure as Mammoth Lakes town manager, he successfully managed the town's budget and 106 full-time employees, assumed a leadership role in 4 disaster declarations, including extreme weather events and COVID-19, promoted housing projects and programs, invested in parks and recreation amenities, improved recycling programs, and enhanced overall services in the town of Mammoth Lakes. Mr. Haller achieved a wide diversity of accomplishments to improve the quality of life and experiences for residents, businesses, and visitors of Mammoth Lakes. One particularly noteworthy accomplishment was his leadership in the development, funding, and partnerships supporting a new community recreation center, home of the LA Kings Ice at Mammoth Lakes and the Mammoth Rec Zone. It is because of the commitment of people like Mr. Haller that Mammoth Lakes is such a great place to live, work, and raise a family. And I personally saw how effective he was when Mammoth was hit by really unprecedented extreme weather and storms last year. And the task of clearing the streets, making them drivable, and the million other challenges that this weather presented were incredibly difficult to deal with, and yet he managed them ably. The snow was cleared from the streets in time. You wouldn't even be able to believe how quickly he was able to do that, and his entire team, and it tells you a lot about the caliber of his leadership. I'm confident that the legacy he built of hard work, resilience, vision, and service will continue in the town of Mammoth Lakes for many years to come. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take a moment to recognize U.S. Army Sergeant Maciel Hay, who recently made history as the first woman on active duty to graduate from the United States Army's sniper course. Sergeant Hay grew up shooting guns on her family's ranches in California and Oregon, with the ability to quickly find targets, earning her the nickname Sniper. However, her interest and motivation in becoming a sniper didn't begin until she attended a local community college in my district, Sierra College. Defying odds, she completed basic training while qualifying as an expert with the M4 assault rifle, and then went on to graduate from airborne school. To attend sniper school, Sergeant Hay went through a scrupulous selection process, meeting numerous mental and physical requirements, demanding exceptional marksmanship skills and a high level of fitness, discipline, and concentration. Once at school, her skills in marksmanship, the art of stalking and concealment, observation and intelligence gathering, survival skills and land navigation, and urban sniper operations were tested and developed. Through determination, resilience, and sacrifice, Sergeant Hay successfully completed the training, living up to her childhood nickname and becoming the first female active duty Army sniper. I commend Sergeant Hay for her incredible capabilities, motivation, drive, and teamwork skills, and I am confident that her achievement will inspire many others towards their goals. On behalf of California's 3rd Congressional District and the United States House of Representatives, I am honored to recognize Sergeant Hay for this historic accomplishment and wish to express gratitude for her heroic and invaluable service to our country. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the outgoing COO of the Folsom Chamber of Commerce, Sherry Merrick. Before working with the local small business community, Sherry started her career in the dental industry as an office manager and bookkeeper. In that position, her passion for the dental industry grew, inspiring her to expand her education in the dental field. She went on to attain over 19 years of managing experience and in teaching whole body health education with a focus on the connection between the mouth and the rest of the body. Through innovative marketing approaches and educational tools, she helped many dental offices thrive in a down economy. From there, she established her own consulting and community engagement company and worked closely with the Folsom Chamber of Commerce. In 2020, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, she took up her passion for small business full-time by joining the Folsom Chamber of Commerce team. During that time, she played an instrumental role towards helping many organizations face and overcome the challenges surrounding the pandemic. For almost 7 years as a whole, Sherry devoted her time and talents to Folsom businesses. Through my own experience working with Sherry, I can attest to the ambition and enthusiasm with which she performed her role. And I would like to commend her for the lasting contributions she's made towards promoting the business environment, economic vitality, and quality of life in Folsom. It is because of remarkable people like Sherry Merrick that Folsom is such a great place to live, to work, and to raise a family. And while she will be greatly missed in Folsom, I am confident that her breadth of knowledge, experiences, and abilities have uniquely positioned her for her new role as the executive director of the Sister Cice Chamber of Commerce that she'll continue to have and that she'll continue to make a very positive impact. On behalf of the United States House of Representatives, I am honored to recognize Sherry Merrick for her hard work and dedication to the Folsom business community and wish her the best of luck in her new role. Mr. Speaker, I would like to applaud the House Education and the Workforce Committee's passage yesterday of my resolution under the Congressional Review Act to nullify the Biden administration's new independent contractor rule. The resolution passed the committee yesterday. It now has over 60 co-sponsors and has a companion measure led by Senator Cassidy in the Senate. The Biden administration's rule is one of the most harmful regulations that we have ever seen issued in this country. It is explicitly modeled on California's disastrous law known as AB 5, which has cost people their livelihoods in over 600 professions and led to heartbreaking story after heartbreaking story of people who lost their careers, who lost everything. A recent study out of George Mason shows that AB 5 in California led to a 10.4% decline in self-employment and a 4.5% decline in overall employment. And now the Biden administration is threatening to do the same damage to our entire country. Tens of millions of freelancers and independent contractors will be affected by this new rule. Just to take one example, there are hundreds of thousands of truckers who could be taken off the road, throwing our supply chains into chaos. It is by no means an exaggeration to say that the livelihoods of millions of Americans are now at risk. The administration's new rule, which not even the administrator of the Wage and Hour Division could give us any answers as to how it will be applied at a recent hearing that I convened of my subcommittee, it's so overreaching that it's already prompted 4 separate lawsuits on procedural grounds, on statutory grounds, on constitutional grounds. To add insult to injury, the administration has, of all people, brought in to enforce it Julie Su, who was the labor secretary in California and in that role was the architect of AB 5 and ruthlessly enforced it to such devastating effect. Ms. Su remains unconfirmed. For over a year, she has been in an acting capacity, and the Senate returned her nomination to the president last year amid bipartisan opposition, and yet the administration has kept her in that role. Apparently, one of the main reasons being so that she could enforce it in the exact same damaging way that AB 5 was enforced in California. Now, of course, I am continuing to call on President Biden to do the right thing, to withdraw Ms. Su's failed nomination and to withdraw this disastrous new independent contractor rule. But barring that, Ms. Su should at the very least, and President Biden, put the rule on hold, suspend it until the ongoing litigation's outcome is clear. The business community and millions of workers across this country will otherwise be in a state of great and highly damaging uncertainty. In the meantime, I will continue to build support and work with folks on both sides of the aisle to pass this resolution under the Congressional Review Act so that we can spare millions of American workers from the same fate that folks have suffered in California and to protect the right to urban living in this country. Thank you, and I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know a man, a decent man, who said that preventing genocide is an achievable goal, a goal that requires a level of government organization and engagement that matches in its intensity the brutality and efficiency required to carry out mass killing. Too often, these efforts have come too late, after the best and least costly opportunities to prevent them have been missed. The man that said that was then Vice President and now President Joseph Biden. And he was right. Mr. Speaker, I rise to say that such a time is now. As we speak, in this moment, 1.1 million innocents in Gaza are at famine's door. A famine that is being intentionally precipitated through the blocking of food and global humanitarian assistance by leaders in the Israeli government. This is a mass starvation of people, engineered and orchestrated, following the killing of another 30,000, 70% of whom were women and children killed. There is hardly a single hospital left. And this was all accomplished, much of this accomplished, with U.S. resources and weapons. If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. It looks like thousands of children eating grass as their bodies consume themselves while trucks of food are slowed and halted just miles away. It looks like good and decent people who do nothing, or too little, too late. It is against United States law to provide weapons to forces who block United States humanitarian assistance. And that is exactly what is happening right now. So much so that the president himself stated during the State of the Union that the United States must and will be building its own port to let aid through. It will be too late. The time is now to force compliance with U.S. law and the standards of humanity and fulfill our obligations to the American people to suspend the transfer of U.S. weapons to the Israeli government in order to stop and prevent further atrocity. Honoring our alliances does not mean facilitating mass killing. We cannot hide from our responsibility any longer. Blocking assistance from one's closest allies to starve 1 million people is not unintentional. We have a responsibility to prove the value of global democracy, enshrined in the upholding of civil society, rule of law, and commitment to human and civil rights. This is not just about Israel or Gaza. This is about us. The world will never be the same, and we will never be the same. And we must write our story in this moment of what it means and who we are as Americans. And our story must be not that we were good men who did nothing, but that we were a committed democracy that did something. And we must prove that now. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlewoman yields back. Those are a good amount of time. Pursuant to Section 3Z of the House Resolution 5, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. on Tuesday, March 26, 2024.
Thanks, sir.
have problem settling on Johnson.
How's that? Is it getting anywhere?
Still the same. Do you need a piece of cardboard?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I hope Bill's laughing.
Hey, Matt.
Yo!
You want this?
Sorry, Daniel. I don't know.
It's okay. It's all right. I will probably ask more times because I'm terrible at
Being in this room, that pushes me.
I think I also I saw COVID.
All right, how about now?
Like I would airdrop
What?
White House coverage. So I don't yes, I see all these people.
How do you manage to juggle all of that? Because I find it's difficult if you're not following.
I teach it all the time. And then always go back and even people later is there for me. So no, I just
You're good at discussing.
I mean, I kind of have to be.
Yeah,
But I mean, I've been doing this since like I was living in Miami.
Okay. Which do you prefer?
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, I agree with it.
But no, turn around.
Turn it? Okay.
Yeah. Right there.
The stock price?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen headlines about it, but that's what again, not to get
I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, so.
Because I'm just interested in the whole campaign finance thing.
Yeah, so you just do side piece.
On, I guess, on Monday.
So just the focus.
Yes.
Just press the button. Just send me halfway through it. And then keep the whole picture.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more of a closer shot, like you can adjust the lens. I think like
Yeah. Yeah. Is everyone fast?
Yeah, I know, right? No, I admire the perspicacity in doing it.
I don't think that there's going to be an issue
No, I don't.
finding space.
Might have a shot.
You might.
It's been a while. It's been a while. Yeah. Some regional way.
Yeah, that's a long time. Let's go in the hospital. Hey, how are you? Okay. I think you should ask about it.
That is my
They must have gotten a readout.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
How's marriage like?
Oh, perfect. And you too.
Good to see you.
Well, it has to be once Kirby's done, because it's in market.
So I'd like to see Kirby credit.
Oh, what a day. Yeah, it is.
That was amazing.
It's not a good substitute. The only good thing is I'm on vacation.
Where are you going? Is it your kids for life?
I'm not going to
Thank you for clarifying.
I think we're going to try to go into every other deeper and I think the blossoms are already
Like dying off, yeah. Especially for the best.
Yeah. Hey, how are you? Huh? Yes. But this too shall pass.
Yes, me. I think our leaves.
I get 2 more months.
Oh, yeah. You split it up. That's very nice.
Did you have a boy or girl?
Well, we had a girl, we had a 4-year-old girl, little
How old is he?
7 weeks.
Wow, you're coming back like you think it's more stage. That is
Yeah, I think.
a weekend?
But is it, unless he's been employed for 3 months now, so he's like
Full time. It's like making up.
he's doing all the parenting.
I think if I could have done it again, I would have done 2 months rather than 1 month.
Yeah,
I know I get 3 months total.
Right.
So the first bit, 2 months, 1 month later.
Yeah.
Now I take 1 month first, 2 months later.
At least she'll be like at a more fun age.
Yeah.
But for me,
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I feel like, like, we're just barely getting into like resolve.
But the thing is, there is no routine. It's constantly evolving.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way.
But I mean, like every time.
Oh, I'm
I feel like my
We're all
first
gonna get a
was
drink
the
later.
worst when I came back.
Yeah. But also that's just time.
Sorry about that. Yeah, exactly. Like, it was just a big sleep regression.
I just pulled it out of another conversation.
Wait, was it after? Because it was inside one order? Oh, okay. Well, I did your wave. I want to see that.
Oh, wait,
This is an Appropriations thing. You feel like you can get past it? Usually can be a problem.
when we came to that, 2 things happened this week. One is, we asked her where she got her alcohol. Never had it. And secondly, we asked her where she got it. What do you do?
It's one of those days.
And the first person said,
Jim, she was so awesome.
20-year-old, 5-year-old.
So, these are ABC. We'll take the count. And then CBS on the down. And then we're back. Used to be that way back in the old everybody's here. Everybody's here, everybody's here. It's very crowded.
Yeah. Wow, I can imagine. And you all have to be in your favorites.
Sometimes it's kind of still like that, but for most everything.
Is this your share?
No, that's CNN.
That's funny.
Unless it's a group chat, I'm not sure. I think everybody's saying that.
Right. I had one the other day.
Wait, Trump?
No. Biden.
Oh.
But it
Was
was
the
like
press
one
conference
because
of Trump's physical
was special.
Let's make it for an advanced class.
He, press conference outside of
During COVID.
during COVID.
That was like when you really felt like you were watching a reality show.
Remember the shooting up there, all wearing the white coats, and then Meadows.
Oh, and then
On camera.
and then he was like off the record when he was on camera.
Yeah, he's way sicker than we.
Yeah, they are not letting him have that.
I know, and now we know the doctors came out of break when Trump was like making an injection.
Huh?
Oh, this is when Meadows is off the record on a hot mic.
Yes, exactly. And the camera.
I was at home watching that, and I was like, and I had to like rewind it, like, did that just, oh my God.
What's his name?
You look gorgeous. Thank you, baby. And they're the most expensive. And then like you just like pause it. And so I stopped the recording so just like because they're adopted.
How's it going?
I love the confidence. I love the confidence.
She's like talking to the trainer. Oh, you.
You have a couple quotes still on the wall in the booth, by the way. Yeah. Very, very durable. I forget exactly what they were, but clearly they're winners.
Mine is surprised.
Your legacy intact. Okay, who's gonna take it?
What's the latest?
There's an embargo. Apparently the news is under embargo until 2 o'clock.
What is the news?
Unclear.
We can't say it on hot mics. Don't say it on.
I don't actually know what the deal is.
I do, but I can't say.
Somebody knows.
Well, we're all gonna know in 7 minutes.
Maybe they're waiting to start the briefing for the budget.
For 30 seconds.
Yeah, people are just tweeting that there is news and it's going to be out soon.
So this, the thing, I never figured out if it was real. Oh, alright.
Taylor's gonna go file.
Oh.
Yeah, it's struggles with
News coming.
Yes.
What's wrong with it?
Steve, do you?
No, I don't know what it is.
I feel like you should have.
It sounds like a lawyer's thing, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds like
It sounds like financial news from the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's definitely more writers
Our
than
London
oil
people,
future.
our London people might know that it's
Ask one of the Alistairs. I know, that's what I'm saying. One of them has to know. I would think the link true. No. This is off the spirit. That's true. Yeah. And does that even give them majority? Buck leaves next week. They started. They were Buck would just have a 1 seat. So Gallagher leaves. So they don't have a majority. It's tied.
No, I think we have 1 seat in a row.
Even with Gallagher. Okay, so let's see.
Bush number 2. Yeah. And he was always on.
Oh my God.
Steve, are you watching the water?
Yeah.
What? And it's not on worry yet. Caitlin says it's Cajun.
What?
There's a video.
There's a video? She released a video, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Say thank you personally for all the wonderful messages of support, for your understanding.
Generative AI.
I've had a fantastic medical team taking great care of me, which I'm so grateful for. In January, I underwent major abdominal surgery in London, and at the time,
the surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present. My medical team therefore advised that I should undergo a course of preventative chemotherapy, and I'm now in the early stages of that treatment. This, of course, came as a huge shock, and William and I have been doing everything we can to process and manage this privately for the sake of our young family. As you can imagine, this has taken time. It has taken me time to recover from major surgery in order to start my treatment. But most importantly, it has taken us time to explain everything to George, Charlotte, and Louis in a way that's appropriate for them and to reassure them that I'm going to be okay. As I've said to them, I am well and getting stronger every day by focusing on the things that will help me heal in my mind, body, and spirits. Having William by my side is a great source of comfort and reassurance too, as is the love, support, and kindness that has been shown by so many of you. It means so much to us both. We hope that you'll understand that as a family, we now need some time, space, and privacy while I complete my treatment. My work has always brought me a deep sense of joy, and I look forward to being back when I'm able. But for now, I must focus on making a full recovery. At this time, I'm also thinking of all those whose lives have been affected by cancer. For everyone facing this disease, in whatever form, please do not lose faith or hope. You are not alone.
The statement from Princess Catherine from Buckingham Palace just moments ago, an extraordinarily raw and personal statement from the princess herself, talking about how she is now undergoing preventative chemotherapy for cancer that was discovered in tests that followed that abdominal surgery that we reported back in January. As you know, back in January, Buckingham Palace only revealed that she was undergoing that surgery, was not expected to resume royal duties until around Easter. She was mostly out of the public eye, appearing with Prince William at a farm in Windsor just a few days ago. There was video of that seen around the world. A Mother's Day photo of Princess Catherine and her children raising questions when it was learned that the photo was digitally altered. Catherine undergoing surgery at the same time and at the same facility as King Charles, who revealed he was being treated for a prostate issue. The palace later informing the public that he has cancer and is being treated for that. They have not specified which type. Let's stick to Princess Catherine for now. I want to bring in Maggie Rulli outside Buckingham Palace in London. Maggie, what more have we learned?
Hi, David. I think right now people are just still in shock from this news. You know, even Catherine used that word. This is shocking. We have been following this story for weeks now. We've seen this global concern for her health, but it really feels as almost no one felt that this was the diagnosis, a cancer diagnosis for Princess Catherine. I think right now people do have a lot of questions. People ask Kensington Palace what kind of cancer, what stage of cancer. Right now they are saying this is a private matter and it's going to stay that way. I think for me what's also so shocking is thinking of Kate right now. She's so young, 42 years old, a mom to 3 young kids. She talks about them in that personal video of giving them time to process this. She's been in relatively good health. She's athletic. I think, again, hearing this news, the country is going to need time to process this. Right now, it's really flooring people.
Maggie Rulli, right there outside Buckingham Palace. Maggie, thank you. I want to bring in our royal contributor, Victoria Murphy, as well. And Victoria, you've learned more about why the timing has been as such, learning now, the people of the UK and certainly around the world listening to this message from Princess Catherine. You heard her reference there. She needed time to explain this to their children, but an extraordinary moment. And in fact, I can't remember one like this from the royal family.
No, exactly, and neither can I. And now we have a situation where we have both the King and the Princess of Wales being treated for undisclosed forms of cancer. It really is unprecedented, and it does have that very destabilizing effect, David. I mean, I was in a call with Kensington Palace earlier on today where this was laid out for us and it was explained to us. And as Maggie said, the overriding sentiment there was just complete shock that this is what we are hearing. Some of the things that they were very keen to get across, one was that this decision to announce this is not some kind of reaction to these conspiracy theories that have been swirling. This is about the princess deciding in her own time to announce this in the way that was best for her and her family. And I think it was very important to her to do that in her own words, in a video message, to talk directly to the public who has been so interested and so keen to know how she is doing and to tell them. And the other thing that I really felt came across, David, was how so much of the decisions that they have made in the past few weeks have really been about focusing on their children and putting their children first. And even the timing of this announcement really is all about, I think, protecting the children, because their children, George, Charlotte and Louis, have just broken up for their Easter holidays there. So they're now able to take the children away from their school environment, keep them in a bubble with them and really protect them from the outside world while this news and while this reaction hits the rest of the world and while people are talking about it. The inference there that we got from that discussion that we had with Kensington Palace was that it took them some time to tell the children. It doesn't seem like the children were told straight away, but they are not giving us lots of specific information about what has gone on behind the scenes because they are also trying to maintain their privacy.
Victoria, I would also imagine, and I'm assuming this from the timing of this, in mentioning that the children are home now for the Easter break, they won't be surrounded by other young people, other folks who might be able to ask questions at school and elsewhere, that this will be a time for the family and a somewhat protected time also would explain why there's been this sort of time frame in waiting to tell the public.
I think that is exactly right. I think that is exactly it. She has been processing this information. She's been discussing it with her husband, and they've been considering how to talk to their children about it, bearing in mind that their children go to school, they go to school with other children, they interact with other children, even things like telling their children something like this and then asking them not to talk to anyone about it is a difficult thing to do. So all of these things will have been going on in their minds. And I think the timing of this announcement is about the fact that they can now take their children
away from the outside world. They're going to be having time as a family. And we've been told that not to expect to see them appear at that Easter Sunday service. This announcement also answers that question that had sort of been bubbling up recently. When are we going to see her next? Because, of course, there was a video of her seen walking, looking well, looking in good spirits. And so people were starting to ask, well, will she be at the Easter Sunday service with other members of the royal family? And so this now answers that question and gives us a lot more context for understanding why they're not going to be there as a family.
Victoria Murphy with us here as we report the breaking news from Buckingham Palace. Princess Catherine revealing a short time ago that she is undergoing preventative chemotherapy for cancer. Victoria, thank you. I want to bring in Dr. Darian Sutton, who's with me here on the desk in New York. And it's really impossible to speculate what's happening here, at least from a medical perspective, because when you hear preventative chemotherapy, this really could be a category for a number of different types of cancer.
Absolutely, David. So when you talk about preventative chemotherapy, it really depends on what type of cancer we're talking about. It can be different from one patient to another. The main goals of preventative chemotherapy, commonly when they're used in the world of oncology, is number one, to prevent the risk of recurrence. And then in certain cases, the surgeon or the oncologist might be concerned that there are residual cancer cells there. And again, that goal of that preventative chemotherapy is to prevent those cancer cells from becoming a problem in the future.
So that's sort of two different categories. There could be a situation where the cancer they believe is out, but that they would prescribe preventative chemotherapy to make sure or to try to ensure it doesn't come back. There could be another scenario, for example, where they might believe there could be some cancer left and they want to try to go at it right away.
And that is quite possible. And also the type of chemotherapy is also indicated or dictated by the type of cancer we're talking about. In certain cases, you can have targeted chemotherapy, and in other cases, you can give more general chemotherapy. Now, that's important for the patient to know about, just in terms of what to expect.
And when we hear about abdominal surgery back in January, this had been reported at the time. It would likely be foolish to assume that this is abdominal cancer. It could be any number of different types of cancer based on what they discovered afterwards, according to the Buckingham Palace here.
That's exactly correct. So when you talk about abdominal surgery and abdominal cancers, that can include a variety of different causes. We can talk about stomach cancer, we can talk about colon cancer, and we can also talk about uterine cancer and ovarian cancer. All of these cancers, as well as other types of cancers, can be possible, but we do not know that information as we respect her privacy.
We're getting reaction from the Prime Minister of the UK, Dr. Darian Sutton. Darian, thank you. I want to bring back in Maggie for reaction from the Prime Minister. What are you hearing?
Yeah, we just heard from the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, here in the UK. He had a statement. The love and support of the whole country goes out to the Princess of Wales after she announced she's undergoing treatment for cancer. I think, David, it can't be overstated how important the royal family is for this country, and the fact that the Princess of Wales, the future queen, just announced that she has cancer. It's really rocking this country right now so much. The Prime Minister made that statement almost immediately after her video was released.
Maggie Rulli outside Buckingham Palace. Maggie, thank you. Our chief medical editor, Jen Ashton, also with us on the phone. And Dr. Ashton, just to add what Dr. Sutton was offering just moments ago, when you hear from Buckingham Palace that they discovered the cancer in testing following the surgery, that's not uncommon.
Right, David. I mean, I think when people hear this story, if they're undergoing elective scheduled surgery, it can be frightening, right, to think you're going in for surgery for one thing and you come out then sometime after the surgery in the postoperative period with a diagnosis of cancer. It's important to understand that before we take a patient to the operating room, there are certain tumor markers that can be tested for with blood tests, and then there's imaging, CAT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds that tend to give the surgeon an idea whether something is malignant or benign. After the surgery, when the patient goes home to recover, that's when the pathologists are going to be studying those specimens, and that's why there can be a delay and getting a cancer diagnosis somewhat unexpectedly in the postoperative period.
And Dr. Jen, when you hear Princess Catherine in that message toward the end, they're saying, I am well, I am getting stronger every day, I must focus on a full recovery now. What does that tell you?
Mind-body connection, David. You and I have talked about it before. It's so important when people recover from any operation, whether it's routine, whether it's scheduled, or whether it's emergent. The mind has to heal and the body has to heal, and those processes take time. And someone's spirit and someone's mindset is as important as their physical condition going into that period.
And we cannot overstate the fact that she is 42 years old, the mother of 3 young children, so she ought to be afforded all the time that she needs to get stronger and to get better. Jen Ashton with us as well. Jen, thank you as always. I want to bring in ABC News contributor, royal editor at the London Evening Standard for one final thought here. Robert, you and I have been on the air covering the royals so often, and I can't remember a situation, first of all, where we've heard Princess Catherine at this length in front of the camera with a message being seen by the world, and certainly under these circumstances, but also big picture here to know that the king is battling some form of cancer and that Princess Catherine now says she's being treated for preventative chemotherapy for a type of cancer as well. This is an extraordinary moment for the royal family.
Well, David, as Maggie said, this is deeply, deeply shocking. I think a lot of people didn't expect anything like this. Not only to have the king, who's obviously not really, only he's carrying out constitutional duties, but he's recovering and being treated for cancer. But the other real star performer, the Princess of Wales, to come out and what I thought was a courageous statement, the way she gave that address. It showed what a steely character she is, and what your guests have been saying about how important it is for her to have the mental application to deal with this. I have no doubt whatsoever she has that. She's somebody who I think is a very strong person. You know, not only she is the mother of 3, but she's deeply committed to the royal family and to making sure that she, and I think there was what I felt in that statement was that real determination to beat this. And I'm sure that the media will give them the time and space that they need. But it does, on the bigger picture, put a lot of pressure on Prince William, the Prince of Wales, the heir to the throne, and the other members of the royal family. There are fewer and fewer, it seems, but with the 2 star performers, the king and the Princess of Wales out of action, it does draw a lot of attention on Prince William, who's got a lot to deal with at the moment.
Robert Jobson with us as well this afternoon as we report the news that's coming in from Buckingham Palace, Princess Catherine, and that statement to the world, to the people of the UK, and certainly around the globe who've been concerned about her absence in recent weeks, saying she is being treated with preventative chemotherapy for a cancer that showed up in testing following that abdominal surgery. We should mention the White House addressing this just moments ago, saying our thoughts are with the Duchess of Cambridge and her family, her friends during this incredibly difficult time. Certainly, we wish her a full recovery. We respect their privacy, especially at this time. I should note that also quite telling in that message, at least for me, was the fact that she pointed out the millions of others, certainly through the UK and around the world, who are battling some form of cancer. She indicated that her thoughts are with them as well as she fights this in what has become a very public way beginning today. Our coverage is going to continue, ABC News Live, abcnews.com, and of course, I'll be back with the entire team a bit later for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir in New York. Until then, good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Moving forward with continuous symptom control. Ask your neurologist about starting Ultomiris.
We look forward to seeing you on the road. With that, Admiral John Kirby is here to give us an update, discuss Ukraine and the Middle East, and the President's morning call with President-elect Indonesia. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Corinne. I'm going to thank you in advance for your patience. So I do have a few things I'm going to try to get through here. Let me put my cheaters on. First, before I go through what I prepared to talk about, obviously we've all seen the reports in the video coming out of Moscow. This violent shooting at looks like a shopping mall. Can't speak much to the details of it. I mean, this was all just breaking before I came on out here, so we're trying to get more information, but really would refer to Russian authorities to speak to it. The images are just horrible and just hard to watch, and our thoughts obviously are going to be with the victims of this terrible, terrible shooting attack. And I think, you look at that video if you have, and you got to recognize that there's some moms and dads and brothers and sisters and sons and daughters that haven't gotten the news yet. And this is going to be a tough day. So our thoughts are with them. You might have also seen, hopefully you saw the State Department, our embassy there, put out a notice to all Americans in Moscow to avoid any large gathering, concerts, obviously shopping malls, anything like that, just for their own safety. They should stay put where they are and stay plugged into the State Department for any additional updates and information. I'm afraid that's really all I have on that. Now on Ukraine, Today, Russia launched a massive wave of missiles and Iranian-made drones against Ukraine's cities and civilian infrastructure, which Ukraine reports is the largest series of airstrikes that Russia has launched against Ukraine's energy grid since the start of this war. Ukrainian officials say that at least 10 different regions of their country were struck, leaving more than 1 million homes without electricity. Our hearts go out to all the families of those civilians who were killed, and we're praying for a quick recovery for those who are wounded by these attacks. They demonstrate once again, the attacks do, how vital it is that we continue to provide Ukraine with air defense systems and capabilities, interceptor missiles, the tools that they need to protect themselves and their infrastructure. Mr. Putin's not waiting. He's not sitting on his hands. He's making lethal use of every single minute available to him while our own Congress refuses to act. He's not wavering, neither should we. The House of Representatives must pass the National Security Supplemental as soon as possible so that we can provide Ukraine with this vital equipment. And as we've seen in just the last couple of days, every single day the House delays is another day that the Ukrainians have to pay for it with their own blood. Now, also today, the United States put forward a resolution at the UN Security Council that supported ongoing diplomatic efforts aimed at securing an immediate ceasefire in Gaza as part of a hostage deal. Notably, the resolution condemned Hamas for the October 7th attacks, which we believe is long overdue, blaming Hamas, condemning Hamas, especially in light of the UN's recent report confirming that Hamas engaged in conflict-related sexual violence. This was a balanced, timely text, and it is in line with our long-standing calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza over a period of at least 6 weeks as part of a hostage deal. Nothing new there. The vast majority of the Council voted in favor of the resolution, some 11 other nations. Unfortunately, Russia and China vetoed it. That was hardly a surprise. They'd rather shoot down something that we authored simply because we authored it, rather than consider the strength of what it called for with overwhelming Council support. And what did it call for? An immediate ceasefire. All hostages released. More aid getting in to the people of Gaza. And Hamas condemned for the slaughter of innocent Israelis. It's difficult to look at that text and find what's objectionable about it, except the fact that the United States is the one that authored it and put it forward. Now, if I could switch to Mexico and some sanctions. On efforts to counter illicit fentanyl, part of President Biden's Unity Agenda efforts to save lives by stemming the flow of illicit trafficking of drugs, the Treasury Department today sanctioned 15 Sinaloa cartel members and 6 businesses operating in Mexico that are engaged in the trafficking of these deadly drugs. Now, these people are involved in what's known as a black market peso exchange. It's a scheme to launder illicit fentanyl proceeds for the Sinaloa cartel. And the cartel, if you don't know, if you're not tracking, is one of the most violent drug trafficking organizations in the world, responsible for a significant portion of the illicit fentanyl and other deadly drugs trafficked into the United States. Today's sanctions were possible thanks to ongoing U.S. law enforcement collaboration and strong partnership with the government of Mexico, with which we coordinated closely and for which we are grateful. And finally, President Biden spoke earlier today with President-elect Prabowo Subianto of Indonesia to congratulate him on his election victory. President Biden pledged to expand cooperation with Indonesia under the U.S.-Indonesia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, and to work together towards an Indo-Pacific that is free, open, prosperous, and secure. And with that, I'll take some questions.
Thank you so much, Admiral.
Thank you for your patience.
Thanks, appreciate it. On Monday, Jay Sullivan stood here and said that a major military operation from the Israelis into Rafah would be a mistake. That was after a phone call with President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Of course, today we saw Secretary of State Blinken say that, warn again even more about a military operation into Rafah, and yet we saw Netanyahu say that they are prepared to do it alone. So are we to understand that President Biden has just lost all of his sway here?
I would also note that Prime Minister Netanyahu said he recognizes there's a debate about Rafah. I would also note that the Israeli government will be sending a delegation here in coming days to talk to us from in an interagency perspective about some viable options and alternatives to a major ground operation. President and Prime Minister Netanyahu just spoke a few days ago, and they will speak again, no question about it. We've not shied away from expressing our concerns to them, and they have not refused to listen. And there have been examples in the past, I've gone through it from the podium, where they have actually taken on board the advice and counsel we provided.
So you're convinced that you have some reason to believe that you can still convince them to change course?
We are going to share with them our lessons, our perspectives, We're going to share with them some alternatives about how they can eliminate the threat of Hamas in Gaza, particularly in the Rafah area, without conducting a major ground offensive. As you heard Secretary Blinken say today, we still believe that a major ground offensive is a mistake.
But while he was on the ground, Netanyahu still said again that they are prepared to do it alone. If you guys have a disagreement this big, is that grounds to consider withholding military aid?
They're coming here, hopefully next week, it looks like, to have a discussion about viable options. Why don't we have that discussion, see where that takes us before we leap to conclusions? I would add a couple of things. Yes, we saw what the Prime Minister said, and he should speak to his comments to the Israeli people. That's for him to talk to. But we haven't seen him go into Rafah, have we? They haven't conducted a major ground offensive yet. So we believe there's still still time and space to have these discussions and to share with them what we've learned.
What will make this?
No, go ahead. No, I'm just saying we don't have
this meeting next week a success, John, between the United States and Israel.
We're not putting benchmarks on it, Steve. We're looking forward to the opportunity to have a delegation here from Israel to share some of our thinking about viable alternatives, and we'll see where it goes from there.
If Netanyahu comes to speak to Congress, would the president take the opportunity to meet with him while he's here?
I couldn't answer that question since we don't have a visit by Prime Minister Netanyahu to speak to. I would just note that these two guys have known each other a long time, and they're speaking frequently.
Israeli Defense Minister Gallant is scheduled to go to the Pentagon on Tuesday. Has that broader meeting with the other officials, has a date been set for it yet?
We'll have more to share in coming days about what the schedule is going to look like, but we expect that the meeting will take place next week.
Does the president feel that he...
Let me just add, it'll be that delegation that meeting about Rafah is a separate meeting than the defense minister's meeting with Secretary Austin, which was long scheduled.
Does the president feel that he does have tools in his toolbox to perhaps exercise harder leverage against Israel if they do move forward with going into Rafah?
We're going to continue to approach this with Israel as we have in the past, which is to make sure that they have the tools they need to defend themselves against a still viable threat, while at the same time using the strength of the relationship between the United States and Israel. And yes, the strength of the relationship between the Prime Minister and the President to continue to urge them to minimize civilian casualties, to allow more humanitarian assistance to get in. And this is getting, we haven't once talked about in this press conference today about the hostage deal, to move forward on that hostage deal, which again, we think those talks are making progress.
Can you talk a little bit about how much progress? I mean, Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday said gaps are narrowing. Do you think that it's close?
We do believe that we're getting closer. I couldn't give you a date certain on the calendar, but that the discussions are still happening, and that they are happening at the pace at which they are, and with the participation that we're seeing on all sides, it's a good sign. And again, I don't want to get too sanguine here. Nothing's negotiated till it's all negotiated, but we do believe that the gaps are narrowing and we are getting closer.
Can you speak to the phrasing of the UN resolution that the U.S. proposed? That it says that the Security Council would determine the imperative of an immediate and sustained ceasefire. Why not just call for a ceasefire directly? Why phrase it like it has?
I don't want you to read too much into the vernacular here. What we called for in this resolution is perfectly in keeping with what we've been saying now for weeks. We want to see an immediate ceasefire so that a hostage deal can take place. You got to have a cessation of hostilities to get hostages out and to be able to get aid in. And what we're looking for, and it's in the resolution, is for a period of about 6 weeks.
Yep, just a clarification. Do you have any details you can share about who will actually be in this meeting with the Israeli delegation when they come, who on the U.S. side, who on the
We'll have
side?
more details. We'll have more details in coming days.
Thank you. On Venezuela, do you have a reaction to the arrest that happened this week of two people close to Maria Corina Machado?
Yeah.
And how does this affect the calculation of the United States to reimpose sanctions in April? Is it still possible to have free elections in Venezuela?
We're deeply concerned by these reports of these arrests. What I would say on sanctions relief is we're still willing to consider sanctions relief on the Maduro regime and on Venezuela if they meet the obligations that they made in the fall in Barbados. And reports of arrests like this certainly give us pause to think about how serious they are about meeting those commitments.
Has there been any conversations with them recently? So
I would refer you to the State Department. I'm not aware of any conversations from the National Security Council, but you should talk to the State Department.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Can you talk about, in a practical sense, what it means that the U.S. thinks it's a mistake for Israel to go into Rafah with a ground offensive? Will you halt aid and weapons?
Yeah, I think I just got the same question. I'm not going to get it. No, well, you didn't. There was an answer. Maybe you didn't find it satisfactory, but that's okay. What we're talking about here is making it clear to the Israelis our deep concerns about any ground offensive into Rafah. There's 1.5 million people there, and it's not a big space. They've got to be accounted for. Their safety and security has got to be protected. And we believe that a major ground offensive is a mistake. We believe that it will be, as I've said many times, and you've heard from other officials, a disaster, certainly for those 1.5 million refugees in Rafah. And so we want to present to the Israelis some viable alternatives and options about how they could go after the legitimate threat of Hamas there in Rafah without sacrificing the safety and security of those people.
Is it a mistake, or is it a violation of the national security memo that would in turn result in the halt of aid and weapons?
I believe the State Department has already talked about that. The Israelis have submitted their letter in keeping with the national security memo, and Secretary of State has determined that the information they provided was credible and was reliable.
And just one more quick one, because you've said so many times from this podium, John, you've said repeatedly, the U.S. is not going to tell Israel how to conduct its military operation. So if you're willing to do it now, why not before?
We're not doing it now.
You're not telling them not to do something with
That's not what
regard
this
to...
meeting is about. We're not we're going to lay out terms. This is a sovereign country, and they have their own military and they have their own operations to conduct. They have to make those decisions. But as a friend of Israel and an ally, as before today and next week, we want to make sure that they make those decisions fully informed with our lessons learned from urban warfare and this kind of fighting in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, do they have to listen to our advice and counsel? No. But we have seen in the past where they have taken some of it on board. We hope they take this on board.
Thank you. Thanks, Reed. Hey, John, there's a report that the U.S. is urging Ukraine to stop attacks on Russia's energy infrastructure out of fear that it's going to drive up oil prices. Can you confirm those conversations are happening?
I'm not going to speak to the specifics in that press reporting. The only thing I would tell you is what I've said before. We do not encourage or enable the Ukrainian military to conduct strikes inside Russia.
Are you concerned about this at all, that these attacks are happening against their energy infrastructure?
We do not encourage or enable Ukraine to strike inside Russia.
John, do you have any updates on the U.S. involvement when it comes to Haiti? And also, what are the conversations, if any, about changing or fixing the immigration status when it comes to Haitians who cannot file for asylum in the country as it's been overtaken by gangs, which is considered a coordinated militia, and they come here?
On your second question, I'd refer you, to April, to the State Department to speak to the particular policies on asylum seekers. But can you repeat your first question, because I'm not sure I totally understood it.
Do you have an update on U.S. involvement when it comes to Haiti?
An update on U.S. involvement. So I would say, look, our lines of effort are really kind of three things right now. One is working with the Haitians on a Haitian-led political transition process, and that presidential council, that transitional council is up and running, and hopefully we'll see some movement here in coming days about their selection of individuals for governance in Haiti that can be credible and can meet the aspirations of the Haitian people. Number two, we're working with Kenya on a Kenyan-led multinational security support mission, which would not include U.S. Troops on the ground as part of that mission, but we are working with Kenyans on what that could look like, what support they might need externally from the United States. And then thirdly, and this is clearly we're doing what we can to help those Americans who want to leave Haiti get out safely. And there were some additional helicopter movements today, as a matter of fact.
Thank you. So question, did the U.S. have prior knowledge of this attack in Moscow, given that the U.S. Embassy had issued warning beforehand?
I'm not aware of any advanced knowledge that we had of this terrible attack.
On March 8th, the embassy warns of imminent attack in Moscow by extremists.
Yeah, I think that I'll let the State Department speak to that. But I don't think that was related to this specific attack.
Just a couple more. John, today the Vice President said that she had seen the plans and that there was no credible way to allow for the relocation.
She said she looked at a map. She saw maps of Gaza.
And said that there was no credible way to relocate those who are sheltering there. Was it ever feasible?
As I've said from the podium myself, 1.5 million people in a very confined space, that is a tall order for any military to find a place for that many people to go where they can be safe and secure, where they can have access to medical care, food, water. That's a tall order for any military. And I think the Vice President is speaking plainly and candidly about the scope and the scale of that kind of a challenge.
For weeks, though, the U.S. was saying the only way they would support a ground invasion in Rafah was if there was a credible plan to relocate those civilians.
That's
so
correct.
The position now is that's not possible. Was it ever possible?
We have not seen such a credible plan. And one of the things that we want to talk about with this Israeli delegation next week is exactly that. I mean, we're getting focused on the ground offensive, but the other thing we want to talk to them about is the humanitarian situation there in Rafah.
Should we expect the president to be a part of this meeting next week, or you would not expect that with the Israeli delegation?
We'll have more details about participation in coming days.
All right, Danny, and then Brian, you have
Thanks, Green. Thanks, Admiral. On the attack on Moscow, I know you're still gathering information, but do you have any sense whether this could be linked at all to the conflict in Ukraine?
There is no indication at this time that Ukraine or Ukrainians were involved in this shooting. But again, this just broke. We're taking a look at it, but I would disabuse you at this early hour of any connection to Ukraine.
A quick follow-up and then a question. Well, first question. Sorry, John. Is there? Can you explain the difference between the veto that was offered by China and Russia to a peace in the Middle East ceasefire, and the one that we offered in February? What's the difference?
Ours was based on substance. Ours was based on the actual content in the resolution, which just called for an immediate ceasefire, no condemnation of Hamas, no connection to getting the hostages out, nothing in there about humanitarian assistance. We support an immediate ceasefire. But as our resolution said, in connection with a hostage deal that gets those people home, gets more aid in, and actually for the first time at the Security Council, condemns Hamas for what they did on the 7th of October. Our objections and our vetoes were based on substance and content. The objections and the vetoes today by Russia and China were simply based on politics. Because we authored it, it had to be bad.
Thanks. And a follow-up wait, real quick, a follow-up on Russia is there any indication, there's been speculation, that it shows with the protest that was brought up with Alexei's death, that there is some pattern of instability now in the Russian regime? Would you confirm that, or do you think it's too early to say that?
I think it's difficult with the news today to make some broader point about instability in Moscow or in Russia. Clearly, there are people in Moscow and in Russia that object to the way Mr. Putin is governing the country. But I don't think we're at this early hour we can make a link between the shopping mall attack and political motivations. I think we need more time and we need to learn more information.
Thank you so
Have a great
much,
weekend,
Admiral.
everybody.
Have a great weekend. Thanks, Admiral. All right, Chris, what you got?
So the spending votes today, it's been difficult occasionally for the White House to reach durable spending agreements with House Republicans. What's your response to the motion to vacate that was filed against Speaker Johnson and the feature of those kind of negotiations?
Look, we've always been very clear. We are not going to get in the middle of what's going on in the House leadership. That's not going to be our focus. The president has been very clear. He's going to continue to focus on the American people. You saw him in Arizona, where he made a really important CHIPS announcement on semiconductors, going to create 30,000 jobs in Arizona, good-paying union jobs. The $8.5 billion commitment that's going to actually, with Intel, that's going to actually spur more investment into this country on manufacturing investment, doing more semiconductors right here in the U.S. And so that's what the president wants to focus on, creating jobs, actually investing in America. You saw him go through 3 states in 2 days to talk about how he sees this vision for this country. He has been also very clear. Look, there are a couple of things that are on the floor of the House, right? Or one of them is should be on the floor of the House, which is the National Security Supplemental. We know it would get overwhelming support. We need to see them move forward on it. You just heard from my colleague from NSC how important that for Ukraine to have the funding that they need or have the assistance, security assistance that they need to continue to defend themselves. So we want to see that go through. And there's the bipartisan agreement that came out of the Senate. Republicans and Democrats coming together to try and deal with what's going at the border. We're just not going to speak to what's going on with the leadership. I guess get your popcorn, sit tight, watch what's happening.
What's the risk if the Senate does not immediately move on the spending legislation and potential for partial whatever shutdown?
I mean, look, there is still time to prevent a partial shutdown. The House passed the funding bill, as you all know, and the Senate still has time to pass it today, and there's no reason for it to not move forward. This is not about this president. It's not about the White House. It's about the American people. We've always said that. This is about programs that American families need, and so we should be able to avoid a partial shutdown. It is possible to do so, and so we want to see the Senate move quickly on this.
Thanks. Has the president seen that dramatic video of migrants surging past National Guardsmen in Texas and El Paso?
I mean, look, I have not spoken to the president about that video. What I can say is this. I really, truly believe that's a question for, the Republican governor of Texas, right? This is something that he should address, that he should actually speak to. The president has worked with Congress in the Senate, as I just spoke to, about getting an immigration bill done, making sure that we deal with the border challenges that we see that we're now seeing, and you have a governor of Texas who has continued to politicize this. I do want to say we are grateful for the Border Patrol's quick work to get the situation under control and apprehend the migrants, so that's important. But congressional Republicans need to move on this. What they're doing instead, and this is the bipartisan agreement, obviously, is listening to the former president, President Trump, tell them not to get involved in moving forward with this bipartisan agreement because of his own personal politics, because it will help this president. You all reported that. It's not coming from us. You all reported that. And it is unfortunate that Congress, Republicans, are not getting on board with what majority of Americans care about. And you have a governor in Texas, Governor Abbott, who is continuing to make this sadly a dangerous situation, a chaotic situation. Let's not forget who they pass by to pass by the razor wires. They pass by the Texas National Guards that the Republican governor put at the border.
Are you saying that Americans should just expect that there will continue to be a standoff between the National Guardsmen and the border agents? What is the resolution?
There shouldn't. The resolution is pushing forward with the bipartisan agreement that came out of the Senate with Republicans and Democrats. That's the solution.
But with all due respect, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere.
It's not. There's no all due respect. You are asking me a question. I am telling you the solution. The solution is for Congress to move forward and Republicans to get out of the way or get involved. Get involved. Republicans in the Senate got involved with the Democrats, got involved with us as well for a couple of months to come up with this bipartisan agreement. An agreement that was supported by the Border Patrol Union, an agreement that was supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that if it is put into effect, it does become law. If they give the president the opportunity to sign this bill, it would be the toughest and the fairest legislation or law that we have seen in some time to deal with the border. I mean, honestly, this is a question for the governor of Texas. Seriously, that question is for, he's the one who, the razor wire, that's him. The National Guards, that's him. The Border Patrol agents still did their job, even though it was, they got in the way. Like the governor's plans got in the way.
It sounds like right now the White House and the president, the administration is not considering anything else to stop future events like that. Right now, the blame is the Texas governor and Congress.
You have a governor who has politicized this issue. Fact. That is just fact. He's politicized this issue. You have a former president who has said to Congress, Republicans in Congress, do not move forward with a bipartisan agreement that was agreed upon by senators because it helps us. It helps Joe Biden. When we're not thinking about helping Joe Biden, we're thinking about helping the American people. Majority of the American people want us to do something on this issue. And Republicans are allowing the former president to get in the way. So we've done the work. We have. We have done the work. And we need more. Yes, we were able to secure more funding for DHS with this budget deal, but we need more resources. We do. And so there is an agreement. There is an agreement that took 2 months to get to. I don't know. It's up to them. They have to answer that question.
But on that same issue, today Governor Ron DeSantis said that he's also looking at implementing a law like Texas that would allow Florida to arrest migrants as soon as they cross the Florida border. Are you concerned that other governors will be looking into kind of stricter immigration laws like this?
I'm concerned about the politics that's being played here instead of dealing with the issue. Instead of the governor in Florida saying, hey, senators, my senators in my state, we need to work on the issue at hand here. There is a bipartisan agreement that is in your chamber, right? That is in the Senate, that was agreed upon in a bipartisan way. Can you guys move forward with that instead of playing politics? That's what we want to see. We want to see an issue actually dealt with that majority of Americans care about. There is a I cannot say this enough. There is a bipartisan agreement that came out of the Senate. Republicans were asked to reject it because of the former president, because of helping his own politics. That's not how we should be moving forward as a country. That is just not, and that's not what the president believes.
Thank you. So on this border video, what does President Biden think should happen to adult men who are assaulting and overpowering U.S. National Guardsmen?
Well, let me just first say we're grateful, and I said this moments ago, to Border Patrol agents for their to quickly work and get the situation under control and apprehend the migrants. So I want to be really clear that everyone who was apprehended by Border Patrol. They were able to do their job, even though it's made it more. Even though Republican governor, in particular Governor Abbott, has made it difficult for them. They need more resources. We need more personnel. I mean, we have to have the backs of our law enforcement on the ground who are dealing with this every day. But Republicans are getting in the way. Republicans in Congress do not want to help. And you have a Governor Abbott, who's politicizing it. That is what's happening. Border Patrol agents did their job, even though the governor's getting in the way of them doing their jobs.
But I get that you guys, you talk so much about having a more humane immigration system. This video does not show helpless women and children begging for a safe place to come in. It shows adult men landing haymakers on U.S. troops in uniform. If that was happening anywhere else in the world, wouldn't President Biden send reinforcements?
So 2 things. Everyone was apprehended by the Border Patrol agents. That is important to note. They were apprehended.
Were they deported?
They were apprehended. I can't speak to individual cases. That's not something I can do from here. But they were all apprehended. That's number one. And the reason why you're talking about the Texas National Guard, they were there because of the governor of Texas. The governor of Texas put the Texas National Guard there. We didn't put them there. He put them there. What we need is actually real solutions. We need to see resources. The Border Patrol agents deserve resources. They deserve to be able to do their jobs. And we're not getting that from Republicans. They're rejecting a bipartisan agreement that came out of the Senate.
And last one, there is a Venezuelan migrant with 500,000 followers on TikTok who is telling border crossers they can live in empty houses in this country. Would President Biden support a law that would make that kind of squatting illegal?
I have not seen that TikTok video, so I can't comment on that. Go ahead, Akilah. Or maybe not. Okay.
Does the president have plans to speak to Hakeem Jeffries now that there has been a motion to vacate for Speaker Mike Johnson about whether Democrats will support him if that vote happens?
That's something for Democrats to speak to. We're not going to get involved. We do not get involved. We've been pretty pretty consistent, regardless if it's Republicans or Democrats. We've been pretty consistent in that. We trust Hakeem Jeffries' leadership. He's the leader of the Democrats. That is for them to decide on. I'm not going to comment on that.
But if Democrats were to force him to bring a vote to the national security supplemental bill, would Biden then support their support of this?
Look, Democrats are going to make their decision. Democrats' leadership, Hakeem Jeffries is going to make their own decision on how to move forward. We're going to be consistent here on how important it is to move the national security supplemental. We've been very clear. It passed 70-29 out of the Senate overwhelmingly. We believe it would pass overwhelmingly in the House if it was put to the floor. And there's no time to wait here. There's no time to wait. We see what's going on in Ukraine, and a lot of that is because of congressional inaction. We can't continue to allow that to happen. Ukraine needs the funding, the security, obviously, to continue to defend themselves, and that's what we're going to continue to speak to.
Just a quick housekeeping matter. Will the president head to Wilmington regardless of whether the shutdown is going to be averted or not?
So you hear us say this all the time. This is still the case with this scenario that we're seeing, obviously, in Congress right now, is that the president is the president wherever he is. And he can do his business wherever he is. I just don't have a change in his schedule at this time.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average has been closing in on 40,000 this week. It's down a little bit today, but does the president see that as an economic achievement, or does he view that, in his view, is the stock market not necessarily representative of the economy?
So while we've said many times here, you've heard that from our economists, you've heard that from me, the stock market is not the economy. We understand that. It is clear that President Biden's economic plan is working to grow the middle class, spur investments in manufacturing. You just heard me talk about what we saw in Arizona, what the president was able to announce in Arizona, semiconductors that came out of the CHIPS and Science Act, incredibly important bipartisan legislation, infrastructure, and outperform other countries. That's what we're trying to do here. So record stock market highs under President Biden are good for retirement accounts, obviously household wealth, which is why we would never root for a stock market crash or for Americans to lose their jobs. That's not what this president is about.
Could you, if there could potentially be a lapse in funding if they can't get this passed in the Senate by tonight. Can you speak to what the planning has been like for White House operations here? Like who would be deemed essential? Can people work over the weekend? That kind of.
So look, Congress can prevent this partial shutdown. We believe there's still time to do that. So I want to be very clear here. But like every other agency, we are reviewing and updating our contingency plan. This is something that we do regularly, and we'll have more to share, obviously, once that is finalized. But federal employees just across the government will furlough, and that includes White House staff, just to give you a little bit of what that would look like. But we believe there is still time. There's still time for Congress to prevent a partial shutdown. This doesn't have to be. This doesn't have to be. And obviously, we're always, like every agency, we look at all options.
If I could ask one question related to the royals. When King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer, President Biden had said that he had hoped to speak with him. Did they ever connect?
So I don't have a call to read out about with the president and King Charles. I just don't have anything to share at this time.
The president will reach out to King Charles over the weekend about this?
Yeah, look, as I said before, obviously it is a tragic news. It is devastating news, and we certainly wish the Duchess of Cambridge a full recovery. We want to respect their privacy, especially at this time. They have young children, they have a family, so we want to respect their privacy. I don't have anything to share on the president reaching out. We just are learning this news literally as I walked out. With this news came to be, and so it is incredibly devastating to hear, and we wish her again a full recovery. Okay, Karen.
It was
just over a week ago that the White House announced the new weapons package for Ukraine, and Jake Sullivan had said at the time it could move very quickly to get there. Do you have an update on whether that assistance has reached Ukraine and reached the battlefield yet?
So, as you know, it was important to be able to have that extra additional funding to give the additional assistance. Ukraine obviously needs that. They have been losing ground in the battlefield. So obviously Jay came here and gave a laydown of how important that is. I don't have any specifics on where we are on getting that funding, getting the assistance to the Ukrainians. I would refer you to the Department of Defense, but it was important, it's critical to do everything that we can to make sure Ukraine has what it needs to defend itself. But that is not enough. You also heard Jake Sullivan say that from here. That is not enough. We have to move forward and get the national security supplemental. It has to get out of the House. We know it got out of the Senate. It's important to do that.
I know, gotta wrap. Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Karine. The House Republican majority will narrow even further next month. Mike Gallagher announced that he's stepping down from Congress on April the 19th. Does that present an opportunity for the White House to try to pass that national security supplemental, given the fact that the numbers, the dynamics may be changing?
Look, I mean, we don't even need the dynamics to change, right, in the House to get this done. We really don't. If the Speaker were to put it on the floor, would have put it on the floor weeks ago, today, it would pass overwhelmingly. We know that to be true because we've heard from Republicans, you know where Democrats stand. We know that. And so we don't need the dynamics of the House to change. We just need the Speaker to do his job and put forth on the floor something that we know, the National Security Supplemental, a bill that we know would pass overwhelmingly. That's what he needs to do. We need it. We need it for our own national security. It is important to get this done on behalf of the American people. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.